My name is Sarah Fischer, and I am the author of the Apothecary's Dark Fate.
I'm Allie, and today on Plotopsy we have Sarah Fischer discussing her book, The Apothecary's Dark Fate. Let's get started. Which scene made you laugh unexpectedly while writing it?
I wrote the scene where Brooklynne and Drake are running through the city, and I realized Brooklynne works in an apothecary. She doesn't have physical fitness. She thinks running is the devil. And so I realized she is probably huffing and puffing, and he's dragging her along with his excellent cardio skills. And so I had her explain to him that she is an indoor cat. She doesn't run, she doesn't move quickly. And to me, this scene is just hysterical because in all of these romantasy books, you see these people who are just in amazing shape. And you just have this unlikely heroine who is like, excuse me, I don't run. I am an indoor cat. And I just think it's hysterical.
That was so funny, and I really related to it. Now, how did you go about world building so that the magical world felt realistic?
Well, my story has the mortals and the magical kind of at war, right? And so whenever I made up a magical rule, I had to think, how could the mortals beat it? How could the mortals go against it? How could I make it fair for people without magic? Because in reality, it seems like the magical community should win every time, but they're not. They're not winning. So every time I had a magical rule, humanity and mortals had to be able to beat it too. And I think that helped keep everything kind of in line and realistic because I wanted magic to be fun. I wanted magic to be real and to enhance life, but I didn't want it to overpower society and community so that you couldn't live a good life without it.
That's a really smart way to approach it, and because that sounds like it was difficult to do, it makes me wonder what was the most difficult scene to write?
I think one of the most difficult scenes for me to write was about the first time Brooklynne saw Lewis, the professor who broke her heart and stole her recipe for the love potion. I think that scene was so hard because I hated this character. I hated him with every fiber of my being, and I wanted Drake to beat him up then and there because I felt he deserved to be beaten up. But that was not relevant for my plot at the time, and so it was very hard to kind of rein in my frustration with this character. And so a lot of the times I went through it, rewrote it, and it was hard to allow Brooklynne to feel vulnerable in his presence because I knew he was a jerk and I knew he had manipulated her and he had used her. And so to watch my character that I love and have built and put all this time and effort in to be vulnerable and to know that going to see him was so vulnerable, that was hard for me. So it might not be hard for everybody and it might not read that way, but for me, that scene was actually really hard. And you have the watered down version of what happened.
I'd read a whole book about Drake beating up Lewis. I wish that had made it into the book. Now, what's another deleted scene that didn't make it into the final draft and why?
And I think it actually has to do with Layla and Brock, the people in book 2, because I had a scene where she looks over at him and she just realized that he's just this unbelievably sexy specimen. But every time he opens his mouth, she wants to stick a sock in it. And it was so fun and I loved it. And I liked that it was setting up book 2 and I thought that it explained their dynamic a little bit, but I did not feel like it was great for that scene and I wanted to move the plot along, so I deleted it. So I do wish that had made it in, but I just couldn't find a place for it.
That's hilarious. I love it. Switching gears a little, Brooklynne is a really tough, feisty girl. How did you develop her into a strong heroine without forcing it?
This is a little emotional for me. So I wrote Brooklynne at a very vulnerable time of my life. I had just lost a baby at 16 weeks, and my husband and I learned that we would not be able to have kids. So I just tried to write an angry character who just blames herself for things that are well outside of her control. And I just started writing this character who wants to make everything wonderful and great for the people around her, but just can't figure out how to do it for herself. And I poured a lot of myself and my feelings in there, and I healed from it. So not permanently, you never fully heal from that, but for me it was, how can this character come back from some of the hardest things she's experienced and come back whole. So I wasn't trying to write a strong female character. If anything, I was trying to write myself a little whole, and she helped me do that. So a lot of this wasn't how can I make her strong for herself? It was she needed to be strong for others. And I think that's how she came off. And I'm glad that people don't think it's forced. But for me, it was let's make her as strong as she can for her sister, for others around her, for Mama C, for Drake, for whoever needs her, because she doesn't know how to be whole and strong for herself. And along the way, by pretending she's strong for others, she figures out how to be strong for herself.
I really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And with Brooklynne, she's definitely a caring, empathetic person. And you find out Drake is too underneath that tough exterior. How did you balance writing his smug persona with his darker, more secretive side?
Drake is a smug character. I love Drake because whenever I think of him, I think of Elliot Stabler from Law and Order SVU, and so he was definitely my inspiration for this macho, tough detective who is a little arrogant and a little cocky and has every reason to be because he's amazing and fabulous and gorgeous, but also he has this big deep secret inside of him, because that arrogance and that smugness isn't fun if you don't have that deeper, darker secret. And so for me, it was very important to give him that deeper side that he hid from everybody, because Drake might be the most amazing agent in the city of Beauvais. And by the way, he definitely is. But he also can't have friends, and he doesn't have family, and he has nobody that he can go to because of this secret. So this arrogance and this smugness is this front that he puts on to make it seem like that's a choice, that he doesn't want anybody, that he doesn't need anybody, and that's how he keeps that secret. And so when he finally comes and tells Brock what that secret is, it's not just a huge moment for him as a character because he's revealing what could possibly happen and the dangers that he's in, but he's letting somebody inside, and he's letting somebody see the vulnerable part of him, something that he's never done before. And so for Drake, smugness and arrogance is just a mask for that secret, and it's a mask for the fact that he doesn't want to be alone, and he doesn't want to have another woman in his bed every night because he's afraid to have real relationships. And so for Drake, the arrogance and the smugness, while it's fun to write, and I definitely enjoy writing, it's one of my favorite parts, writing the deeper secret part of him is actually where the fun is, because you know what you're writing is masking that secret.
That makes me want to go back and reread with Stabler in mind. With such strong characters, was there ever a moment when it felt like they were taking over writing the story?
Absolutely. I very firmly believe that my characters tell me what's going to happen next. I do plot, and I do try very hard to stick to that plot. But for example, Melanie is pregnant, and she's taken while she's pregnant, and I didn't know she was pregnant until Brooklynne told me when I was writing the scene. Brooklynne informed me that it was a larger issue, that it wasn't just Melanie who was gone, but it was also potentially her niece and her nephew. And so that was a bit where it just took me completely by surprise, because I was not planning or intending that at all. And actually, I wasn't necessarily planning for a couple other things. Charlotte and Drake have a past relationship, and they're cousins, right? Spoiler alert. I didn't know that they were cousins. It happened later on when I was writing that scene, and I realized that they knew each other. And I was like, how do they know each other? How do they have this relationship? Oh, they have similar magic. How do they understand each other's magic? It's because they're cousins. And so those characters told me that they were related.
That's so cool to have such a connection with your characters and with your own creation. Now, what minor character deserves their own spin-off?
I don't 100% think this question applies to me, because all of the characters that are deserving of a spin-off are getting their own book. So book 2 follows Layla and Brock as the drama in Beauvais City continues, so they do get their own story. And then book 3 follows Junior, whose real name is Apollo, and then somebody else. So I feel like my characters are actually getting their spinoff, if you will. If anything, I would say Melanie and Frederick and how they met deserve a little mini spinoff.
I'm so excited. There's so much more from Beauvier City to come, and I'm really looking forward to reading the sequels. Thank you so much for being here, Sarah, and thank you for the honest discussion about your writing. It's so insightful and admirable that you can create such a large world with such meaningful characters. Be here next week, same day, probably a different time, because I haven't pinpointed that sweet spot time on YouTube yet, for another episode of Plotopsy.